Are you spending $900 every single month on your car? Between the loan payments, the skyrocketing insurance premiums, gas, and that unexpected maintenance bill, it's probably one of the biggest drains on your wealth. But what if I told you that in less than 5 years, that entire cost could collapse? We're talking about going from $900 down to just $250 a month total. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's impossible. Gas isn't getting cheaper and cars are only getting more expensive. And you're right if you're looking at the world through a rearview mirror. The secret to this 10x reduction in cost isn't just about better batteries or Elon Musk's latest tweet. It's actually buried in a mathematical law discovered in 1936, a law that most of Wall Street is either ignoring or completely failing to understand. While the headlines are busy fighting over whether Waymo or Tesla has more cars on the road today, they are missing the deep math that decides who wins the multi-trillion-dollar transportation war. Today, we are going to do the math that no one else is doing. We're going to look at why your car is about to become your worst investment and how a century-old aeronautical law is paving the way for Tesla to dominate the world. Buckle up, because once you see these numbers, you'll never look at your driveway or your portfolio the same way again. To understand why Tesla can confidently promise such a dirt-cheap price for transportation, we don't need to look at Elon Musk's X-feed. We need to look at an aeronautical engineer from nearly 100 years ago. His name was Theodore Wright. In 1936, while studying airplane manufacturing, Wright noticed something genuinely weird in his data. It wasn't just that things got cheaper as you made more of them, it was that they got cheaper at a mathematically predictable rate. He formulated what we now know as Wright's law. It's simple, yet it's the most powerful force in industrial economics. The law states that for every cumulative doubling of units produced, the cost of each unit falls by a fixed percentage. Usually that's around 15 to 20%, every single time. Think about that for a second. This isn't a maybe, this isn't a hope. It is a structural reality of how humans learn to build things better at scale. You've seen this happen your entire life, even if you didn't know the name for it. Look at solar panels. In the late 70s, solar was a niche luxury for space satellites, but as cumulative production doubled and doubled again, the cost plummeted. Today, it's one of the cheapest forms of energy on the planet. Look at lithium-ion batteries. In 2010, a battery pack cost over $1,000 per kilowatt hour. 10 years of Wright's law later, that cost has dropped by nearly 90%. Why? Because we didn't just build batteries, we learned how to build the machines that build the batteries. This is the aha moment most people miss. When you double production, you don't just get more stuff, you get more intelligence. You find the friction in the assembly line. You negotiate better with suppliers. You cut the waste. In the world of tech and finance, we often talk about Moore's law, how chips get faster, but Wright's law is actually more important for your wallet because it's about how things get cheaper. Now here is where it gets interesting for Tesla. When people look at Tesla, they see a car company. When the math looks at Tesla, it sees a massive data collection engine that is currently feeding Wright's law at an exponential rate. But here's the twist. In the world of autonomous driving, the unit isn't an airplane or a battery cell. The unit is a mile. Every single mile driven by a Tesla using full self-driving isn't just a mile on the odometer. It is a unit of training data. It is an edge case handled. It is a safety validation. And most importantly, it is a unit of cost reduction in the AI inference loop. Tesla has already banked over 10 billion miles, and that number is growing by 1 billion miles every single month. We are hitting the doubling phase of Wright's law faster than any other player in the market. So when Wall Street analysts scream that Tesla is overvalued because they sell fewer cars than Toyota, they are fundamentally using the wrong math. They are counting cars. We are counting the rate of learning. If Wright's law held up for 100 years across airplanes, semiconductors, and LED bulbs, why would it stop now? It won't. And as those cumulative miles double, the cost to operate a RoboTaxi doesn't just dip, it falls off a cliff. We are moving towards a world where the software is so smart and the hardware is so optimized that the cost of moving you from point A to point B becomes as cheap as sending an email.
But there's a big problem. If this law is so universal, why isn't everyone winning? Why is Waymo, backed by the infinite cash of Google, currently running a service that feels like a premium luxury ride, while Tesla is aiming for the price of a bus ticket? To find that answer, we have to look at the bloodbath of costs. We have to look at the literal hardware sitting on top of these cars. Because while Tesla is using a $2,000 camera system, their competitors are strapped with sensors that cost more than a luxury SUV. If Wright's law is the engine, then cost is the battlefield. And on this battlefield, we're witnessing an absolute massacre of traditional business models. Let's start with the giant in the room, Uber. When you pay $20 for an Uber ride across town, where does that money actually go? Roughly $14 of that, 70% of the total cost, goes straight to the driver. That's for their time, their labor, and their own car's depreciation. Uber is essentially a massive HR department. Their biggest cost is a human being who needs to sleep, eat, and get paid a living wage. In the world of tech, labor is the ultimate unscalable expense. It doesn't follow Wright's law. Humans don't get 20% cheaper every time they drive twice as many miles. Now let's look at Waymo. Google's Waymo is incredible. Their technology is elegant and their safety record is pristine. But Waymo has a hardware problem. To make their cars work, they strap a massive, expensive suite of sensors to the roof: LiDAR, high-end radar, and sophisticated cooling systems. Early estimates place these sensor suites at upwards of $50,000 to $150,000 per vehicle. Waymo is building the Rolls-Royce of autonomy. It's a premium service. But because their hardware is so capital-intensive and they rely on third-party manufacturers like Hyundai or Zeekr to build the actual cars, their ability to slide down that Wright's law curve is hampered. They're stuck in the luxury tier of the market. And then there's Tesla. Tesla's strategy is the polar opposite. It's what I call the mass market massacre. While Waymo is using $50,000 worth of sensors, Tesla is using a handful of cameras that cost less than your smartphone. By betting entirely on vision-only hardware, Tesla started at a cost basis that was already 20 times lower than the competition. According to research from ARK Invest, this hardware advantage, combined with the sheer volume of production, is leading to a price convergence. We aren't just talking about being a little cheaper than a taxi, we are talking about a cost of 25 cents per mile. Let that sink in. At 25 cents a mile, a trip that costs you $20 today on Uber would cost you $2.50. That's less than a cup of Starbucks coffee to get across the city. How does Tesla get there? It's the 10 billion mile advantage. Every time Tesla's cumulative fleet miles double, which is happening every few months now, the AI gets smarter, the hardware gets more integrated, and the cost per mile drops like a stone. When you hit 10 billion miles of real-world data, you aren't just guessing how to drive in the rain anymore. You've already seen every possible rainy scenario a million times over. You can optimize the software to run on cheaper chips, you can simplify the wiring, you can remove parts that aren't needed. The result? Tesla's cost per mile is already hovering around 81 cents, while Waymo is estimated to be north of $1.30. Tesla is winning the race to the bottom. And in transportation, the lowest cost per mile wins the entire market. But wait a minute, you might be thinking, okay, but if Uber sees this coming, can't they just buy a fleet of autonomous cars and compete? That's the twist no one is talking about. It's called vertical integration. See, Uber doesn't own factories, they don't make chips, they don't manufacture batteries. If Uber wants to go autonomous, they have to buy the tech from someone else, likely at a markup. Tesla, on the other hand, owns the entire stack. They own the means of production. They build the car, they build the battery, they write the software, and they own the charging network. When Tesla launches a RoboTaxi, they're not paying a middleman. Tesla isn't just replacing the driver, they are replacing the entire supply chain. This is why the profit margins for a Tesla RoboTaxi could be unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of transportation. But even with the best math and the lowest costs, there is one thing that can stop a trillion-dollar revolution dead in its tracks. It's not a competitor, it's not a lack of data, it's the one thing that moves slower than any AI on Earth. The math we've just done isn't just about corporate balance sheets, it's about a fundamental shift in how you live your life. Think about the car sitting in your driveway right now. For most Americans, it's the second most expensive thing they own, but it's also the worst investment in history. It sits idle 95% of the time, losing value every second while you pay for insurance, parking, and maintenance just for the privilege of letting it rot. Now apply the 25-cent per mile math. If a RoboTaxi can pick you up in 2 minutes and take you across town for the price of a candy bar, why on earth would you ever want to own a car again? This is the domino effect. The moment transportation becomes a cheap, ubiquitous utility like the internet or electricity, the concept of car ownership collapses for the average person. We are looking at a world where the average suburban family saves $6,000 to $9,000 a year. That is a massive injection of capital back into the pockets of the middle class. But the ripple effects go much further than your bank account. Look at our cities. Right now, roughly 30% of the land in major US cities is dedicated to one thing: parking. We have built our entire civilization around storing idle pieces of metal. When you don't need to park your car because the car just goes to the next passenger, those parking lots disappear. We are talking about a total transformation of real estate. Those asphalt deserts in downtown areas, they become parks, they become affordable housing, they become retail hubs. The value of land shifts because proximity changes its meaning when the cost of commuting drops by 80%. Now let's talk about the investment play. If you are holding Tesla stock, you have to stop thinking about them as a car company. You are holding a call option on the world's largest autonomous transportation network. If Tesla successfully scales this, they aren't just selling a product, they're collecting a tax on every mile driven in the most efficient network on Earth. However, we have to be realistic. There is one wall that math cannot simply climb over: the regulatory wall. Even if the AI is 10 times safer than a human, which the data is starting to suggest, regulators don't move at the speed of silicon. They move at the speed of bureaucracy. One high-profile accident, one political shift, or one city council ban can delay this inevitable future by years. The technology is ready to double every 9 months, but the laws, they might only double their speed every 9 years. This is the time gap risk that every investor needs to manage. So, here's the real question for you. Are you positioned for the world as it is, or the world as it's becoming? Because if you're waiting for the local news to tell you that RoboTaxis are officially here, you've already missed the wealth transfer. The smart money is watching the slope of that cost curve. They are watching the Wright's law staircase cascade downward. We are standing at the edge of a shift so massive, it will reshape where we live, how we spend our time, and how we build our wealth. The only thing left to ask is, what happens when the rest of the world finally wakes up and realizes what 50x actually means? So, what's the bottom line here? We've looked at the history, the hardware, and the brutal reality of the cost curve. The takeaway is clear: Wright's law is an unstoppable force of nature. It doesn't care about market sentiment, and it doesn't care about the noise on social media. It only cares about cumulative production and the relentless march of efficiency. Tesla isn't just building a car. They aren't even just building an AI. They are building a future where cheap movement is a fundamental human right. They are selling the end of the $900 a month car burden. We are standing at a crossroads. One path leads to the old way of thinking, where cars are liabilities and transportation is a massive drain on your wealth. The other path follows the Wright's law staircase, leading to a world where transportation is practically too cheap to meter. As an investor, or even just as a person living in a modern city, your job isn't to predict exactly when the first driverless Tesla will hit your specific street. Your job is to understand the direction of the slope. Because once the math crosses the finish line, the world changes overnight. I want to leave you with one question. If your annual transportation costs drop by 4 times, giving you back thousands of dollars every single year, where are you going to put that money to work? Comment below with the number you currently spend on your car and where you'd reinvest that surplus in 5 years. If you found this deep dive into the math valuable, hit that subscribe button. We're going to keep decoding the real numbers that move the world, one doubling at a time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.